Donald Trump is indicted again. Joe Biden is full of pride and loves Ukrainian money. All of that in this episode of the Mayoral Podcast. Welcome back to the Mayoral Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Matt Mayer. Before I get into today's content, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share with friends and family if you like the content you see here today. So, Donald Trump was indicted again. This time over the classified documents scandal. He's set to be arraigned any minute now. I'm filming this at 2 o'clock Eastern on June 13th, and the arraignment was scheduled for 2 o'clock. So I think what people are questioning more than anything when it comes to this indictment is not only does this hold water, but is this a case that's worthy of bringing to trial, unlike the original case that he got indicted on, which is the Manhattan case from 2016, that they're extending charges from a misdemeanor to stretch them to become a felony, and it's outside of statute of limitations. I think most people think that that's a pretty bogus claim. That's really not going to go very far. Now, this one is a little bit different, and it's not just because of the fact that he mishandled classified documents, but it's the seemingly allegedly falsifying the certification of what documents he had in his possession to the FBI. And that's really what led to the raid on Mar-a-Lago. So it wasn't necessarily just that he had the classified documents. It's that the National Archives had asked several times to get the classified documents back. And he handed over some documents, but not all the documents, and then certified that those were all the documents they were looking for. They believed that there was more. They had the raid on Mar-a-Lago and discovered more documents that should not have been in Donald Trump's possession. Now, a lot of people would say this is not too dissimilar from Hillary Clinton, and that's true. So the Hillary Clinton case, they were able to destroy the documents. They all were whitewashed from her hard drive, and it was stored in a server that was unsecure. She shouldn't have had those documents. She knew she shouldn't have had those documents, just as Donald Trump knew that he shouldn't have these documents. And it wasn't until, I believe, the documents were discovered on Anthony Weiner's computer that anyone actually knew what documents that Hillary had in her possession. So the precedent, though, that was set then, and I think this is where people are getting very upset about the indictment of Donald Trump, is the FBI and the DOJ under the Obama administration decided not to charge Hillary Clinton with very similar crimes that they're charging now former President Trump. And the disparity in how these cases have been handled is pretty glaring. Now, Trump, he kind of shot himself in the foot a little bit by not turning over the documents. If he had turned those documents over, this may not have gotten to this level. But at the same time, the media is treating this as if this is the most pure investigation that there's ever been. And oddly enough, the persons or the people that are defending him are his political opponents on the Republican side. So, for example, Vivek Ramaswamy, and I hope I'm saying that name right. I actually like Vivek a lot. I think he has a bright future ahead of him. I think that in the 2024 Republican race, I don't think he really has much of a shot, but maybe somewhere down the line. He's a young guy. He's about 37 years old, barely even able to run for president of the United States. But he went on CNN and was actually defending President Trump and calling out the media for their uncanny ability to just take the Democrats' word for what they say. So here's the video of Vivek defending Donald Trump.
It is, obviously, as you said, it is unprecedented. I should say that there have been democracies that have prosecuted, put criminal prosecution of former leaders because those times have been so extraordinary.
And here in the middle of an election.
And this obviously is very extraordinary.
I disagree with the allegations. I just think I do not believe those allegations because of, I think, the intellectual dishonesty in that indictment. So I think the federal court is actually, I think, based on the precedent of the Clinton sock drawer case, where effectively Judge Jackson said that it is at the president's, her language, not mine, sole discretion as to what is and is not covered as a presidential record. I think the court will acquit him. But that's beside the point of the judgment that President Biden made. And if Trump's judgment was bad, President Biden's judgment is worse for actually bringing a prosecution. He should have done
didn't-
what Trump did.
President Biden didn't bring a
The
prosecution.
Department of Justice reports into the President of the United States, and so this is a fig
There's
leaf,
but
which is
there's-
why I think the media needs to
But
get to the
there's
bottom
no
of this.
evidence. There's absolutely no evidence,
Dana.
unless you can show me some, that President Biden has had anything to do with this prosecution.
Dana,
That's why he put 2 layers in between with the
With
special
due respect, I think it is shameful that I, as a competitor to President Trump in this race, have to ask questions that the media isn't asking. The job of the political media, if it has one job, is to hold the U.S. government accountable.
Yes, we know that.
And instead, we're doing the bidding. You're seeing the media doing the bidding of the U.S. government.
No.
Ask the question. Get to the bottom of what Biden told Garland and what Garland told Jack Smith. If the same shoe fit the other foot, you would not take their word at face value. Do not take their word now. Get to the bottom of it. Let's actually restore journalism in this country. That's what's actually missing, is getting to the truth.
Okay. Thank you for that. We are absolutely asking these questions.
Good.
And we know how to be good journalists because we do it every single day.
He's absolutely right in that video. He says that if the shoe were on the other foot, would they take Trump's word that he was not involved in the indictment of former President Obama? Absolutely not, nor should they. Why would you take their word? They're obviously going to say they had no involvement whatsoever, but the DOJ reports into the President of the United States. There is a very simple path to say that President Biden was involved, or at least had a intimate knowledge of what was happening at the time of this investigation and the indictment, the indictment into President Donald Trump. Now, the media seems to not learn, or is choosing not to learn at all from their past mistakes. When it came to the Hunter Biden laptop story, they took 50 former intelligence agents' word that this was Russian disinformation and completely dismissed it. They did no investigation whatsoever into the laptop because they didn't want to know the answer. Either they already did know the answer and didn't want to reveal it, or they just didn't want to know the answer altogether because there's a chance that it was true and it would not look good for the candidate that they were trying to back, which at that time was Joe Biden. So Vivek is absolutely right. The media is refusing to learn their lessons from previous election cycles. And to be honest with you, I think people are fed up with it. That's why certain places out there exist when it comes to independent media. This is, a very, very, very small independent media channel. It got about a couple of dozen views per video. So I don't have much clout at all, but there's other places out there that do. And those places out there are where a lot of people are putting their trust in. They're not believing the corporate media, whether it's CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, because they all have their political tilt and they're all trying to tell you what they want you to hear. So you think like they do. So that said, this was a misstep by President Trump. All he really had to do, again, who knows how it ultimately would have planned out. Who knows how it ultimately would have played out. But Trump, all he had to do was turn over the documents. He knew from the minute he entered the race in 2015, all the way through his nomination in 2016, and then his inauguration in 17, and his entire presidency, and then his post-presidency, he knows that there are people that are in the federal government that are out to get him. And he decided that he was going to not take the simple route and just hand over the documents, that he was going to play games with the documents, move them from one place to another, have his lawyers certify that all the documents were handed over, and they actually weren't handed over. So this is where Trump is getting in trouble. It's the obstruction charge more so than the mishandling of the classified documents. And that's a very important distinction, because otherwise you can certainly get Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, and Mike Pence, other people in the mainstream politics of either party, you can get them with the exact same charge. But it's the obstruction charge that is really the one that probably holds the most weight with regards to the indictment of Donald Trump. That said, I think that there's a lot of people out there that, regardless of Trump's behavior, and I think most people, myself included, would say he should not have done what he did, are still wondering why Biden is getting a pass. So is it better that Trump moved around the documents and that he wanted to keep and lied about it, Or is it better that Joe Biden knowingly took classified documents that he should never have had, to never had the ability to declassify them going back decades? So he was a senator for, I don't know, probably 35 years, somewhere in that neighborhood, the vice president for 8 years, then out of the political landscape for 4 years during Trump's presidency, and then the presidential nominee in 2020, and then now the president of the United States. So is it better for Trump, or is it better for Trump to have knowingly mishandled the documents, or Biden unknowingly, gross negligence in this case, mishandling documents? Now, I think more than anything, it's the intent with the documents, what either one of them are doing. I don't think either one of them were trying to sell the documents to foreign adversaries. In that case, that's the more serious allegation if something like that were to come up, that one or both of them were trying to use this to have foreign to gain foreign influence or gain money out of it, whatever the case might be. And maybe something like that comes out of either the Biden document scandal or the Trump document scandal. But you're saying that Joe Biden being grossly negligent for 4 or 5 decades is better than Trump being negligent, openly negligent for, a couple of years. I don't see that distinction. To me, I think both of them are just as bad. And if you actually believe that Biden was just, oops, I didn't know that I had these documents, I didn't know I shouldn't have had these documents, you believe in that gross negligence, then you shouldn't be voting for Joe Biden in 2024, or I have some magic beans to sell you, because you'll believe anything that comes out of the corporate media's mouth. So both of them are bad. Trump, again, the obstruction charge is the one that's going to carry the most weight. With any potential conviction would have to be the obstruction charge, because anything else opens up so many different other politicians. And this has been happening. This isn't just Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton, and Mike Pence. This goes back to Bill Clinton. There's plenty of other people that we probably don't even know about that have had classified documents that they shouldn't have. This was a misstep by President Trump, but Trump has had other missteps, as has other Republicans, especially when it comes to the last couple of election cycles. Now, the 2020 runoff is probably the most egregious, where Trump was telling people, the Georgia runoff was telling people to not vote because their vote wasn't going to be counted. They were going to steal the election anyway. All that nonsense that he threw out there. It really stemmed from the beginning of COVID. Now, the Democrats saw an opportunity with mail-in balloting to start banking votes. Now, ballot harvesting is illegal in a lot of states, but there are states where it is legal. And hat tip to Charlie Kirk, because I believe it's the only one that I've heard say, hey, I don't think we should be allowed to ballot harvest. I think it should be illegal, but right now it's not. And the Democrats are just doing a better job. They're going out and they were getting their people to vote early and vote often. Now, that was far from the message in 2020 from President Trump and all the other Republicans. They were claiming that there was going to be massive fraud when it came to the mail-in ballots. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. It doesn't really matter at this point. What really matters is the fact that the Democrats were banking votes during that time, and Republicans were banking on really election day, maybe some early voting. But that was the message. And Trump couldn't take the fact that Trump and other Republicans, but mainly Trump, when it came to that Georgia runoff, that actually backfired big time against him and against the Republican Party. And that led him to be convinced that Georgia had stolen the election from him, or the state of Georgia had stolen that state from him, and that to give a message to his followers and the Republicans that they're in the state of Georgia, that it wasn't worth it. Meanwhile, the Democrats, from the second that the runoff started, were out there encouraging their people to vote now, vote early, vote often. So you saw this same messaging in 2020 with Democrats banking votes. And if there is one example to highlight, it's Maricopa County in Arizona, where the voting machines were down for 2 or 3 hours, whatever it was during that time frame. There are a lot of people that weren't able to vote because they had somewhere else to go and they weren't able to cast their vote. In those areas, or like on election day, that tended to be more Republican, as the messaging from the Republicans was wait until election day to vote. Now, did something nefarious happen? There's really no evidence of that. maybe some incompetence. I don't really know. What I do know is that the Democrats banked the votes. They won the Senate seat, and then they won the gubernatorial race and a couple of other statewide offices. That is what the message needs to be to Republicans in 2024. It's never too early to kind of get that messaging out there. And like I said, credit to Charlie Kirk, who's already out there saying, hey, we need to go out there and start chasing ballots where it's legal to do. We need to beat them at their own game. Now, that said, this is really one of the biggest discrepancies between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party over the years is their ground game. The Democrats' ground game is way better than the Republicans' ground game. And I have an example of that. Just yesterday, I live in the state of Ohio, and there's a ballot measure that's coming August 8th. I got a knock on my door, and it had to be a Democrat funded volunteer or whatever you want to call it. And this woman came up and was telling me about to vote no on the ballot measure because it would make it harder to pass a constitutional amendment in the state of Ohio. Now, I'm all for that. I think that the winds of politics go back and forth, and that's why the Constitution of not only the United States, but each state need to be very difficult to amend, so that way we don't really get caught up in the times, and it's those rights that are in that document never change. And that's why there's been, I don't know, a few thousand constitutional amendments proposed. It might even be as high as, in the 20,000s. I don't really know the number off the top of my head. And only 27 have been ratified because it's very difficult to amend the United States Constitution, and it was designed specifically for that. So I get this. Let's see if we can see that. And it's vote no in August August 8th. So let me read it here because it's going to be a little bit easier. It says, say no to the amendment that would make citizen-led ballot measures almost impossible and give the minority of voters power to determine the fate of the Ohio Constitution and our state. So again, read that. How would giving or amending the state constitution for basically right now you can have 50% of ballot measures that are led by citizens that got on the ballot only require a majority to pass. Whereas the amendment that they're proposing that's on the ballot is to up that to 60%. So 50.0001 don't tell 49.99999 how to live or what rules we need to live by. So I'm all for making it more difficult, that it needs to be more than just a slim majority to pass this measure. But this is saying give a minority of voters power to determine the fate of the Constitution and our state. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know how they get from requiring just 50% of voters to requiring 60%, so a more closer to a supermajority of voters to pass any constitutional amendment, to being a minority. It's clearly misleading people that they're handing this out to. And I live in a relatively blue part of Ohio, so they're making sure that they're going to the registered voters in this area and trying to get them to turn out with this misleading language. And then it says, protect one person, one vote in Ohio. So you see this big one here, protect one person, one vote in Ohio. So I don't know what messaging they're trying to get across there other than the fact that they're trying to say that our vote won't be counted, or I don't know, maybe other people have multiple votes. I don't know exactly what they're trying to say there, but this is just an example of their ground game. They came literally to my front door and handed that to me. I wanted to take that. I'm not going to vote no on the issue. I'm going to vote yes. I want that threshold to be higher. However, I wanted to illustrate that to any of my viewers out there, what they're doing and why they're winning in a lot of these cases. So, that said, we're going to switch gears here a little bit to the Pride Month celebration at the White House. And, I've never really seen anything quite like this. There's a lot of people on social media that are sharing these videos and these images. And there's one image in particular where a man who has physically transitioned, where he's had surgeries to look like a woman, and then a woman who's done the opposite, who's had the chemical therapy or the hormonal therapy and the surgeries to look like a man. Both of them are on the White House lawn topless. Now, the woman or the man who transitioned to a woman is covering up his breasts, but the woman is completely shirtless. So we have shirtless people on the lawn of the White House. I haven't heard anyone say this yet, but I thought the adults were back in the room when we elected Joe Biden to be president of the United States. That was the claim. The adults are back in the room. This is going to be more serious. It looks like a music festival out there with people taking their shirts off, getting drunk and getting half naked. I don't understand how we've gotten to this point where this is the acceptable behavior in the country, that people showing up topless to the White House lawn, that's normal. I don't know how we got here, but pretty insane. Here's the actual image of what I was talking about. You can see the woman who looks like a man is on the left in this photo, and the man who looks like the woman is in the right in this photo, and behind them is the White House. They're on the lawn, and this is all about pride. Joe Biden is full of pride, and there's multiple clips of him out there talking about how this is like somehow these are like the most important and the bravest people that he's seen. Keep in mind that he just went to the Air Force graduation, I don't know, probably 2 weeks ago, when he fell down and tripped over a sandbag. But not that those people aren't the bravest people. The people that are taking their shirts off at the White House, those are the bravest among us. Here's Joe Biden talking about it.
All of you, what I see is courage. I mean it sincerely. From the bottom, I see courage. Courage. And those who were the generation before you who stepped up, there's even more courage. They worried not only for their lives, they worried for their jobs. They worried for whether or not they could even be involved at all in the community. Imagine what it took 40 years ago to stand up and say, I'm gay. What would have happened? No, I mean, people who had to fear for their lives, just acknowledging it. Just acknowledging it. We all talk about courage. Well, I see more courage in this lawn than I've seen in any time in the recent past.
One of the biggest regrets of my life is probably not joining the military. I really wish that I had joined the military and served my country. If I'm being honest, I really think I just wasn't brave enough to do so. But there are people out there that are veterans, people that have lost their lives, and people that are currently serving in the United States military that are that brave, that are willing to put their life on the line. I know not every day for them is life and death, but they are willing to go into those situations should the situation arise. These people are the bravest people. These people are the people that you need to be congratulating on a daily basis, not the people that are taking their shirts off at the White House, the White House lawn. So Joe Biden really has his priorities messed up, and really this is ultimately all this news, the Trump news, the LGBT month, all of this is really distracting from the major story, the biggest story, which is the Biden bribery scam. Now, I mentioned earlier about how the media just blatantly ignored the Hunter Biden laptop story because it served them to do so. And this bribery story is getting more and more legs to it as we go on. So as soon as the Republicans took over, they really started investigating into the business dealings of Hunter Biden. And now it turns out that there's actual recordings of one of these, I believe it's Burisma executives, that has recordings of not only Hunter, but Joe Biden when it comes to them accepting money to work on their behalf. Now, there's already that video out there of Joe Biden talking about what he did to get a prosecutor fired. Here's the video of Joe Biden talking about exactly that issue.
I remember going over convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to the press conference. I said, no, I said, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid.
In this Biden bribery scheme, this alleged scheme, there's just such a difference between the reporting on this. So this is from the Washington Post as of today, June 13th, 2023. This is the headline. It says, GOP bribery allegations against Biden remain transparently thin. And then from yesterday, Monday the 12th, this is from the Washington Times. It says, Senator Grassley revealed Monday that Ukrainian energy company executive who purportedly bribed President Biden when he was vice president is believed to have audio recordings of the conversations. Mr. Grassley, an Iowa Republican, also said during a floor speech that the FBI had hid the claim from lawmakers. He said the FBI generated an unclassified document known as FD-1023 that the House GOP Oversight Committee members read last week, redacted references to Mr. Biden's audio recordings with the informant. So to say that their allegations are thin when there's actually allegedly recordings out there is a gross over-exaggeration of them trying to downplay the seriousness of this. This has been the allegation, and this has been the implication since the Hunter Biden laptop story came out back in October of 2020. It wasn't necessarily only about the influence that Hunter Biden was peddling overseas. It's what influence did Hunter Biden really even have if it wasn't for Joe Biden, which the whole time would indicate that Joe Biden was allegedly taking money from these foreign actors. There was a former business associate of Hunter Biden that had emails that he had produced to Fox News that showed that there was money being allocated to Joe Biden. He said in these emails he was referenced as the big guy. The media, the mainstream media, totally ignored it, said that this is all Russian disinformation, even though they had a whistleblower, so to speak, giving them actual information. Again, transparently thin when you actually have emails going back and forth discussing the financial details of these business arrangements. The difference, the media treats a whistleblower that actually puts their name behind something, like these FBI whistleblowers that have come out in recent weeks, this Tony Bobulinski, anyone who puts their name behind it, they try to smear and discredit immediately, because most of those people are coming out speaking out against Democratic politicians. On the other side, completely anonymous whistleblowers are treated as kings within this media landscape, and it's unbelievable that they just completely anonymous. And I get if people are going to be anonymous, I get it, but at the same time, this person who's anonymous doesn't even have a name to put out there. We can't verify anything other than this is an anonymous source. And those people are treated as heroes if it's against a Republican. But if somebody actually puts their name on it and actually gets in front of a camera and puts their reputation on the line and says, this is the evidence that I have against the FBI, against Hunter Biden, Joe Biden, those people are treated as if everything they said is a lie from the moment that they were born. So it's really something to behold in American politics here today. And I think, like most people, I'm waiting and hoping for a turn back to normalcy and have a media, mainstream media, that holds everyone accountable. I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat. If they're doing a disservice to the American people for their own benefit, they need to be exposed and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Well, that's it for this episode of the Mayoral Podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, before I leave, make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe, and share with your friends and family if you like the content you saw here today. Thanks. See you in the next episode.